I wasn't religious. I mean, I was a Catholic. Nobody in my family was that religious. Then I went in the Navy, and then at one point I started thinking about my life, and I really thought that there has to be more than life to all this, because it doesn't make any sense. So the next day, I had a friend who was religious, and he got me a New Testament, and I started reading about Jesus and started realizing who Jesus was and that he's real, and I started trying to follow Jesus. So that's my background. But then eventually Jesus led me to Krishna, and I mean, I could see that he actually did that. But once, when I was here, and I was living in a temple, I was not initiated also, and there was a big kirtan going on, and I'm in the kirtan, but in the kirtan, instead of like really being into the kirtan, I'm chanting. But in my mind, all I keep thinking of, you're gonna go to hell. You're worshiping idols. You're gonna go to hell. These are idols. And I'm looking at Radha Gopal, and I don't want to be thinking this. And I'm thinking all of this, that I'm gonna go to hell. And finally, I just said, I don't care if I go to hell. I'm gonna still worship them. And then when I thought that, and I really meant it, my whole body was completely like ecstatic. I couldn't believe the feeling that I felt from Radha Gopi Ballabha by doing that. And then I also started crying too, and I didn't want to cry because I didn't want to disturb the whole kirtan. But I got this reciprocation from Radha Gopi Ballabha at that time, and that also, which was confirmation without a doubt that that is the Supreme Personality of Godhead right there. So that really helped me, and I think got me more attached to Radha Gopi Ballabha than any other deities. So that's my little story that was similarly in kirtan before initiation, and getting this tremendous feeling throughout the whole body, which I could not explain. It was completely spiritual. There was nothing material about it. One time doing traveling Sankirtan, dressed in saffron, shaved head, seeker, all of us, we go out and distribute books in Paterson, New Jersey. And we get arrested in Paterson, New Jersey. They don't know what we're doing. They just, we're so strange. So they asked questions. I said, we're from Boston, we're from Boston. So anyway, they said they're going to call the Boston police to find out about us. So then they called the Boston police, and then they said, okay, you can go. And I said, you called the Boston police? He said, yes. I said, what did they say? He said, they said, you're crazy but harmless. That's what the Boston police thought of us. Crazy but harmless. I started in New York. The first temple I went to was in Henry Street in Brooklyn. And I started chanting 16 rounds. I followed the regulated principles, and I was with my parents, and I just go every day to the temple. And every night from the temple, every night, because I helped them in the printing the books too at the press, because it was in Brooklyn at that time. Not at the temple, but on Tiffany Place, a few blocks away. So all the workers at the press and all the temple devotees, we had 3 vans completely packed, and we go to 42nd Street and do Harinam for an hour or two. And then vans would come for them, and I'd just go back, take the subway and go home. I remember thinking that these devotees, when I get on the subway, I can feel like I'm so high, and I'm just like starting to come down a little bit. And I'm thinking, these devotees, they don't know how high they are because they never stop. They just always do it. I stop, I go home, I stop. They never stop. So I was thinking I have to move into a temple. Where should I move into a temple? And I didn't want to move into Brooklyn because my family is there, and I'm afraid I'm going to get trouble with, my father who may come and start a big fight and stuff. He was Sicilian, and he was, but I knew he wouldn't travel. So I was thinking I looked in the Back to Guided magazine, and I saw that there was a temple in Fiji So I decided that sounds like a good place to go, so I'll go to Fiji. So that, but I was still waiting while helping. Every day I'd go to the press. So one day, it's funny how he mentioned how they bind the books and they sent it to Prabhupada and it just fell apart. So when we were in Brooklyn, after we printed the books, we'd bring it up to a bindery in New Hampshire. So we rented this big truck, and me, Sumahat, and I don't know who the other devotee was. It may have been Pushpavan, but I'm not positive. But we drove the truck up to New Hampshire, dropped off the books, and on the way back, it was late, we stopped at North Beacon Street, and we spent the night there. Satsarup Maharaj was the president at the time. And then I went to the temple, and like Niranjana Swami said, it was just like a family. The devotees there were just so nice. I felt like I was home. Everyone was so nice. And then I decided that I'm going to move into this temple because of, it was Radha Gopi Vallabha's arrangement. They were already installed. This was the same year that they were installed, 71. And then I had this idea of Fiji, but when I saw Radha Gopi Vallabha and the devotees, somehow or other, it was clear to me, this is where Krishna wants me to go. So then I was waiting a little longer. I was waiting for different things to happen. I wanted to get my teeth fixed, because I know once I'm a devotee, that's the end of taking care of anything. So anyway, so I finished that, and then I moved into the temple. And at that time, the temple was broke. I had money, not a lot of money, but I had, because I was in the Navy and I had all these savings bonds. They took so much out of my paycheck, got me savings. So I bought all these savings bonds, and they had no money. They had no way of paying the rent. And then I came, and it was $1,000 a month at that time on North Beacon Street for the rent. So I brought all my, Krishna used me as an instrument to get the mortgage paid for that month. Somehow or other, things really got done. I was a treasurer in the beginning. First I was on Harinam. I'd go on Harinam for about 6 to 8 hours a day, even in the middle of the winter. And then when I became the treasurer, the Harinam party would also sell Back to Godhead magazines, and the collections for a day for the whole temple was about $50. So the whole temple collecting was $50. Eventually, when Keshava came, he got people, and Keshava and Buddhimanta came, and then they got the devotees to count not just the books sold, but the Lakshmi collected. We weren't counting Lakshmi. That was Maya, thinking about money. So we started, anyway, they somehow got us into really distributing books, and then we were collecting about $500 a day for the whole temple. But in the beginning, it was $50 a day. And how it was austere, like Jayadvaita Swami said, it was very austere. Thermostat was set for 55 degrees. 55 degrees is really cold. Everyone had their coats on all the time, winter coats. And then you took cold showers. You slept in a room in sleeping bags, about 20 devotees in the same room, 20 men in the same room, brahmacharis. And prasadam, there wasn't much to eat. We ate very simple. Sunday you had a feast. And I was under the impression, because this was prasadam, it was spiritual, you can eat as much as you want, you don't get full. It's not material. So after about 3 weeks or so, maybe a month, at one Sunday feast, I ate so much I became full. And I remember falling against the wall saying, I'm full. I'm full. It's like, I didn't know you could become full when you're eating prasadam. So that's how austere it was. In the regular meals, we didn't eat much. We didn't use paper. We put a piece of wax paper, just ripped a piece of wax paper on the floor, to one slice of orange, a few chickpeas with ginger, a tiny little bit of halava, and then maybe some little cereal, like oatmeal or something. That was breakfast. I don't remember lunches. I remember once they asked if we, Prabhupada says we should have enough chapatis. That devotees should eat as many chapatis as they want, and that was like really nice that we can have more chapatis than just like one or something. Anyway, it was very austere. Food was austere. We didn't have so much to eat. The cold was austere. The ice cold showers was austere. The laundry, nobody had their own clothes. You just had bins for devotees, socks. That's why devotees would wear different color socks, because you just take 2 socks from the bin and put them on. And I remember seeing, before becoming a devotee, devotees all have different color socks, and sometimes you'd find some devotees that have the same colored socks, like matching pair of socks. And I was thinking, I wonder what the significance is. Maybe that means they're married and the others are single. I was trying to figure out, what does it mean? The significance, why they wear different colored socks. Never came to my mind that they just have different bins and you just take 2 socks. So it was pretty austere in those days. But it was, everyone was fired up. Like Niranjana Swami said, how you didn't quarrel, there was no disagreement, you just did what you were told. And everybody did it, and nobody complained that, well, I'd rather not do this. It just, you're told to do it, you accepted it as Krishna told you to do it. Krishna wants you to do it, Prabhupada wants you to do it, and you just did it. And everybody was really ecstatic and happy, even though it was so austere. I mean, it's not that we voluntarily wanted it to be that austere, but it was, and you dealt with it. I was also about 23 years old, one of the oldest devotees in the temple. Almost all of my time in Boston was North Beacon. They were just moving here, and I didn't have much to do with here. And I mostly did, in the later days, I was just doing traveling Sankirtan. And the only reason I left, a lot of the devotees left Boston because Adi Keshava told them to just come and leave and go to the bus, his bus. But Tredas was the president, but I wouldn't do that. He didn't ask me to do that, but I wouldn't do that because I wanted to do what Krishna wanted me to do. I wanted to do nothing illegal, like leaving here and going somewhere else without it being authorized. So Adi Keshava talked to Tredas and explained to Tredas why I have to leave and go on Radha Damodar, because it's the best thing for my spiritual life. So then Tredas told me to join Radha Damodar. So that's when I left. And then I was on Radha Damodar from the very beginning to the end. But I was very loyal to following authority. It's my authority, if Adi Keshava was no longer my authority, Tredas was my authority, and so if Adi Keshava told me something, I wasn't going to whimsically just go. So he had to convince Tredas that I have to go, so that's why I left. But I think that's probably also part of the military. You learn to follow authority, and people, like I was, as I said, one of the oldest ones. I already was in 4 years in the military. Did some different kinds of jobs. A lot of people were just kids. I actually joined the same day. A lot of people would join then, but the same day this other devotee joined, and we just get our heads shaved right away, get our dhotis, learn how to put them on, etc. And we'd have classes. We'd have a lot of classes every day. We'd have Bhagavad Gita class, Srimad Bhagavatam class, Ishopanishad class, Krishna book reading every single day. And I remember in the Ishopanishad class, we would chant verses. I just joined, and there's this other devotee who just joined, and he's chanting these verses, like he's reading this Sanskrit like you're supposed to read it, and I can't read it at all. It's like I couldn't do it, any Om Namo Bhagavate. Anything I did was, I couldn't do it. And I was thinking, oh, I'm finished. I'm never going to be able to do this. And this guy is so good. And then after about a week, he left. And I felt better that, okay, I guess that doesn't mean just because you can chant the proper Sanskrit, you know, that you're, you know, spiritually advanced. That's not a qualification. So I wasn't glad that he left, but I was glad it gave me hope that that's not the most important thing. Eventually I did learn how to chant some of these verses, but that was in the beginning. Every day, everyone cleaned the temple for half an hour. Every day we had an assignment. We cleaned the walls, we cleaned everything, every single day. To clean the walls, we had buckets and a sponge with a mop, and we'd clean it. And no matter what service you did, we had a half hour. At a certain time, we all worked together and got the whole temple cleaned again. It was New Gundicha. Even there was an article in the paper, I don't know what paper, but here in Boston, about how when we put wax paper on the floor, it says that they eat off, you know, they put a piece of bread and they eat off the floor, and it says the floors are literally clean enough to eat off of. So even in the papers, they noticed our cleanliness, how clean it was here. And Prabhupada says cleanliness is godliness. So it's really important. So we kept the place very clean. Everybody went on Harinam. It was really a family. I was very, very attracted to it. We were going in Boston at one time, book distribution. We had the whole city planned out where we go to every single door in the city. We went everywhere. And people were saying, I remember people saying, how many are there of you? I see you everywhere. Like they're thinking there's thousands of us. There's only like about 25, but we're so enthusiastically going out trying to sell Prabhupada's books. And they're just, and people were noticing. They just thought there's so many of us. I remember one person saying, he was a priest approached, and he said, you remind me of Jesus' first disciples. You know, just going out like this. So I think that was coming from Krishna. You know, we're Prabhupada's first disciples, and same thing. Actually, I mentioned earlier how I was previously following Jesus. I didn't want to become a devotee, but before, when I was following Jesus, I thought that if I lived during Jesus' time, I would be one of his disciples. I really felt strongly. I'd do anything he wanted me to do. So then, I didn't want to become a devotee. I had all these excuses, but then in my mind says, remember, you said if you lived during Jesus' time, you'd be one of his disciples? And I said, yes. He said, well, now you're living during Srila Prabhupada's time. Why don't you become one of his disciples? And I was defeated, so I had to do it. You know, I don't want to shave my head. I don't want to wear, I consider this a dress. I don't want to wear a dress, you know. But, you know, anyway, fortunately, Krishna made me think certain things in the past and then brought them back to me later on so that I wouldn't be a hypocrite. Well, with Harinam, we did it out on Boston Commons or what is it? Harvard Square. We did that too. But we would do door-to-door here. Mostly, I did door-to-door here, but I mostly did traveling Sankirtan. I was in a van, I was in charge of a few devotees, and we'd travel and come back after a few weeks. Well, I remember being instructed. Normally we follow instructions, but I was instructed by Mathuraj. He was in the beginning, my Sankirtan leader. We'd go out door-to-door, and he instructed, not me, all of us, even though it was the winter times, freezing, that don't go inside people's houses or apartments. Don't go in, just stay in the door, you know. So anyway, I'm distributing a book, and somebody's there said, oh, you know, why don't you come in? Just come in, you know, because it's freezing out. Anyway, I didn't feel too bad. I just went in to the house knowing this is safe. First of all, I'm probably older than Mathuraj anyway, and been around longer as far as experience. So I went in, but so I broke that. I didn't follow that one instruction. I remember going into somebody's house And then they, you know, took a book, they went, got their money, gave me the money, and then they left. But I never told him about that. I don't know if he sees this video or if he's going to be upset.